Professor Joseph Drew here. I'm here to talk to you this time about rate caps, both in New South Wales and Victoria. Now, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so. Please flick this link to anyone. Please use it on your council website, whatever you want. The whole purpose of this website is to help you, to help your communities. So any way this video can be used to help communities is more than fine by me. Look, the rate cap that's come out for Victoria is saner than New South Wales. New South Wales rate cap was just beyond belief, and I'll explain the reasons why, and is going to result likely in disaster. The Victorian method is much better, and the cap they've come out with is much better, but it's not sufficient, and I'll explain why now. So there's a thing called the Producer Price Index, and it's a measure of a cost of basket of goods and services bought by firms. Now, this is the most relevant thing to local government. CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is a cost of a basket of goods that a normal household would buy that has very little relevance to local government. So it's this PPI that's interesting, and what's interesting about it is that it's exploding around the world. It hasn't yet in Australia, but it will inevitably do so because we live and work in global economies. So Germany, PPI, 24.2%. Now you've got to be rather old to remember numbers like this. We're going back to 70s. What's happened is we've injected a huge amount of money supply into the global economy, and that was always going to result in extremely high inflation. It's starting to come through now. We're seeing it first in the PPIs. China, 10.3% on an annual basis. USA, 9.75%. Australia, like usual, the ABS is about 3, 4, 5 months behind the rest of the world. So we've only got the September reading, 2.9%, but it's not going to stay at 2.9%. It's going to be much higher than that. Now, compare those PPIs to the rate caps that have gone through. New South Wales, 0.7%. Now, if we just look at the PPI in Australia, we can see that's clearly inadequate. Rate cap in Victoria, 1.75%. Better, but obviously inadequate. Now, what's particularly concerning is that these PPIs are still accelerating in most cases. China's went back a little bit last month. And they're likely to continue to accelerate. Supply shocks, COVID impacts, but most importantly, what's driving these things is the huge amount of money supply that was put into the market. And we're now seeing this turn up in higher wages, which means that this inflation will be sticky. It's not going anywhere. In fact, it's going to climb over time. We're entering into the same sort of spiral as we've entered into in the past. Unfortunately, our policymakers must be rather young because they don't remember the 70s or haven't studied it or haven't studied Milton Friedman. I don't know. But councils are really going to struggle if their costs go up by 3, 4, 5 times what these rate caps are for the next financial year. So all this shows is that the rate capping system doesn't work. Campaigning to remove it is a complete waste of time. LG New South Wales has been campaigning to remove rate capping for years, as long as I can remember, probably all the way back to 1975. Who knows? It's never going to happen because the state political party that removes rate capping is the state political party that's going to get hammered at the next polls when rates inevitably go up by much higher degrees than what they have done in the past. So it's such a political risk. The only chance of removing rate capping would be, prior to a state election, when the state government knew they were almost certainly not going to get in. They could get rid of rate capping as a heuristics maneuver to make things more difficult for the incoming government. So, that's a possibility in New South Wales and in Victoria. Prior to the next state elections, maybe we could have a bit of luck. Maybe that's when the campaign should be timed for to get rid of rate capping, because both of those premiers know they're probably out the door, and this could be a good opportunity to make life harder for incoming premiers. But realistically, I can't see rate capping going. What the focus should always have been on is to make these rate caps fit for purpose. As I said, the Victorian model is actually much better than New South Wales. So if you want to see how things could improve, simply start looking at the the Victorian model, and see the differences between New South Wales. But there's a lot of other things that should and could be done. These have all been covered in my new book, Saving Local Government. I'm understanding from Springer. It's actually available online now. And I will be doing a dedicated video up on how to reform rate capping very shortly. But basically, the big ticket items I'm looking at is automatic triggers, so that councils must put in for rate caps when certain triggers are met. That reduces the political cost of doing so, which means we don't have councils delaying until matters are really grim, which requires larger hikes, results in more public disquiet, and can result in financial failure. We need to have a range of cap, not a cap, a range of cap. These councillors are democratically elected people who are accountable to their communities. They are adults. They're very experienced people. They're very clever people. We can trust them to pick a rate cap within a range of numbers. So what I'm saying is, instead of giving a rate cap of 0.7, the rate cap might have gone from 0.5 up to 2. And that gives the councils the discretion to move within that range according to what they need. Now, that still achieves the purpose of rate cap, which is to protect residents from huge increases to their typical rates. But it gives council discretion, a little bit of room to move. It also gives them and treats them like a tier of government that is responsible and accountable for their decision. It treats them like adults. We need to obviously have data, better data, and more data being used, and I've outlined previously where that could happen. But we also need to look not just at the past, but we need to be looking towards the future. There's no point having a backward-looking rate cap when you're going, particularly when you're going into a high inflation environment, because by the time it catches up in 12 months' time, a lot of these councils may well have gone under. Rate caps need to be specific to the circumstances faced by the local governments, and there's lots of ways to tailor rate caps to communities. Just putting that range in allows them to tailor it to their needs also. And the processes around applying for a special rate variation, different terms used in different states, but to exceed the rate cap, the processes need to be streamlined. They need to be a lot more cheaper. And we need to have sensible submission dates. The submission dates in Victoria aren't too bad. The ones in New South Wales, I just don't understand what they're thinking. They're basically asking you to go out to your community just prior to Christmas and to do all the work that's required for an SRV during Christmas, January, when most council employees are on leave. It's just really bad timing, and they don't need... IPART doesn't need that many months to make a decision, surely, because the ESC in Victoria is doing it much quicker. So, I hope you found this video helpful. If you have, as I say, please use it to help others. That's the whole idea, and please subscribe. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.